What are we talking about?
Well, how did we meet?
Officially, we met in swim lessons as kids, but I'm the only one that remembers that. So I don't know if we can really count it because Lindsay has no recollection of ever taking swim lessons and me being there, but I definitely remember her. So, but yeah, other than that, I guess we would have met in middle school. Obviously, neither of us really remember it because we weren't friends in middle school, but I know of her for sure.
In high school, we weren't friends until probably my sophomore year, but we had a lot more interaction in high school than we did in middle school.
Yeah, I'd say I first noticed Lindsay and thought, man, she's kind of special. We had a class called Expanded Learning together, and the goal of that class was essentially like a study hall to work on projects and prepare for the ACT, that kind of thing. It turned out being a board game class where we just came every day and played games.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of fun. We really bonded over Secret Hitler, which if you don't know what that is, it's a board game and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It tends to bring out the worst in people, but I think playing that game and just watching Lindsay and how she interacted with everybody and how she handled losses, I'd say that was probably when I noticed her, and yeah, she kind of became a worm in my brain.
Yeah. And for me, I had going into my freshman year of high school, I'd been thinking to myself and just thinking of the prospects. I was like, you know what? I just don't think I'm gonna date in high school because the only person that I might date would be Jackson Burning, but he would never be interested in me.
I don't know why you thought that.
So that was where I was at the end of my sophomore year, so his junior year. We both got invited to someone's graduation party, and he gave me a ride, and that's kind of where it all started.
Yeah, I mean, so I remember that being like we were in a parking lot. I was walking away. We were going our separate ways, and I was like, "Hey, Lindsay, you want to go to that party tomorrow? I'll drive you." But she remembers being the one that initiated that.
I feel like I asked, do you want to ride together? But
I think it was me.
I
So I was
know.
definitely hoping that would happen. I'm sure I initiated it. Anyways, we ended up going to the graduation party together, and I didn't really think much of it, but so I was driving on the way there and probably on the way back. I just had whatever country radio station playing.
Yeah.
And so I dropped Lindsay off. Said goodbye, and I'm like, man, that was kind of fun. She's cool. And then later that day or the next day, she texts me and says, next time you take me somewhere, I'm choosing the tunes. She said next time, and I was like, heck yes. That was pretty much the start of us becoming real friends.
Yeah, so I guess we were off and on talking over the summer. Nothing crazy. I think we maybe hung out twice. But
yeah,
super low key, there's definitely nothing happening.
So yeah, there we are that summer, getting to know each other. In my mind, I'm thinking, okay, this is going somewhere. Lindsay's pretty cool. She had a very different idea of where that was going.
Yeah. For me, I was like, man, I really like Jackson, but I don't want to date right now, and I don't want to be leading him on. So I felt the need to clarify. We had a conversation, and so I let out basically by being like, what do you think this is? Or what do you feel like we are?
It's a total trap.
And he answered and basically was telling me why he enjoyed being friends with me and that it had been fun getting to know me over the however long it'd been. And then he was like, but I don't think it could stay that way forever. And I was like, okay, so he like wants it to go somewhere. And at the time I was thinking I would like it to go somewhere too, but like not right now. So I kind of explained all of that. He was like, okay. And we were still friends and stuff. And I honestly, like, I don't think anything really changed. Like, things just kind of went on and we were good friends.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that conversation probably happened like soon before school was starting. So we started another school year. So we definitely were still hanging out and we're still good friends pretty much all of that year. So by now it's his senior year and it's also 2020. So by the time the spring rolls around, COVID happens. And we've had various conversations at that point about like the status of our friendship and the future.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it was sometime during COVID and lockdown. At one point, I was just getting so overwhelmed with like, man, I want to date this guy so bad, but I just didn't feel right in my conscience that we were like ready or mature enough to date. Also, he was going to be moving off to college. I was likely going to be going to college in California, and I was like, our lives are just going two very different directions. It's not going to work. So I was struggling with that, and eventually had a conversation with him that basically there was no future between us, no possibility, that I didn't want to date long distance, and life was taking us two different places. And I did say point blank, like, I wouldn't marry you, and that's why I won't date you. And here we are.
Cut to the fall semester. I move away to college, and pretty much with the mindset, having been told that that it was time to move on. And so I came to K-State and got plugged into good community, met a lot of great friends, and did my best to put Lindsay out of my mind and try to forget about her.
I guess there was my graduation party next. I'd been thinking to myself, like, things can't go on the way they are. I enjoyed his friendship, so I didn't really want it to end, but it felt appropriate, especially considering the fact that I had closed all doors to the future very firmly. And
I was doing my best to move on as well. I knew if I wanted to move on from Lindsay and do my best to find somebody else, I'd have to like firmly shut that door. So going into that summer, we pretty much shook hands and agreed that we'd call it quits.
And so that summer goes on. I don't think we really talked at all, maybe once. I was preparing to go off to college in California, and the university that I was going to is a Christian university, and the big joke is that women go there to find their husbands. So the door completely closed with Jackson. I was 100% preparing myself to go off to California and find my husband at Masters, and that's where we were both at. We were spouse searching.
So going into fall semester of my sophomore year and her freshman year, that's where we were at. And that semester ended very, very differently from how it started.
So different.
So probably around September, because that's when teal season opens. I was out driving around scouting for ducks, so I had a lot of time on my hands and thought, man, I haven't talked to Lindsay in a while. So I called her.
Which was super out of the blue for me. I was not expecting to hear from him. And yeah, that phone call, like, really, I was just seeing so much of Jackson that I hadn't seen in high school. Just he was growing and changing in so many ways. It was really obvious over the phone, his passions and his priorities. And I was like, wow, like, this is so cool.
I didn't really have any intentions with that phone call. Like, I really just wanted to talk to my friend. But yeah, I mean, leaving that conversation, my main thought was, man, yeah, she is pretty great. But I didn't really have any hopes that it would go anywhere. It was just really sweet to catch up. Yeah. Yeah. So that semester continues. I'm still putting myself out there. And so, yeah, I mean, over the course of the semester, I have a growing realization as I meet and talk to more awesome Christian women at K-State. It just became an overwhelming realization that I really have no reason that I'm not pursuing these women other than I know if I was with them or if I said yes to them, they would be second place in my mind. And I would be, in the back of my mind, I would be wishing that I was with Lindsay. So that was really hard to process through and try to reconcile, because I had, at this point, completely given up any hope that there would be a relationship between the two of us. That was a completely foregone conclusion, and I still just couldn't quite get over her. So that was really hard. I didn't really know what to do about it. So I was thinking these things and processed all of that with my mentor, Nate Sapp. And he basically, he told me, looking in the eyes, and said, "Jackson, you've got to tell her." I knew in my heart he was right, and I needed to tell her everything that I was thinking. But that was still like a really tough thing to grapple with because of how all our past conversations and the history of our relationship had gone. The prospect of laying it on the line was pretty much like, in my mind, if I did that, I was gonna lose Lindsay. If I told her how I felt, she would say, "Darn, that's too bad, but I don't want to date you."
For me, this is all happening. I'm super oblivious to it, obviously. And I'm texting one of my best friends from home who is friends with one of Jackson's roommates.
Mm-hmm.
And she's texting me and she was like, "I heard a rumor about Jackson burning." And I was like, okay. And she was like, "Well, I heard that he's still into you." And I was like, whatever. Like, there's no way that guy still likes me. Like, no. But we decided to be a little dramatic. And so I was like, "He doesn't know I'm coming home for Thanksgiving." She was like, "You guys need to, like, run into each other." And I was like, how in the world would we make that happen? So Lindsay and I hatched this plan because she was on Instagram and Jackson followed her. So as soon as I got home, we took a picture together and she posted it on her story. And I kid you not, probably 2 hours later, within 2 hours of her posting it, I get a text from Jackson. "Are you home?" And I was like, "Why, yes, I am." Yeah. And so then he asked if I wanted to catch up, and we decided to get coffee and talked for 2 hours. For me, that was that conversation. I was just really seeing his heart, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. And I end that coffee get together and go to lunch. And my lunch plans are the same friend who was like, I don't remember. And so she's obviously asking me about it. She's like, have a coffee with it, Jackson, go. And so I start telling her about it, and she just like stops me. And she's like, you're interested again, aren't you? And I was like, well, I was like, I think so. And so like she knew better than I did. She could tell, and yeah.
Yeah. So Thanksgiving break ends. I head back to Manhattan. Lindsay heads back to California. And so I'm like really excited. Man, that conversation was just so fun. We got to see Lindsay's heart and how she's grown and matured. And man, yeah. So at that point, I like tell my mentor again, I'm like, Nate, oh my goodness, this girl. And so he's like, come on, Jackson, you gotta tell her. And so I'm like, yeah, he's right. I decided to wait until Christmas break, when I knew she would be back in Kansas. So yeah, Christmas break rolls around and I'm like stealing my nerves because I know what I have to do. Yeah, so I invited her to go drive around and look at Christmas lights. And
yeah, in my mind, I'm like, if anything is a date, okay, so, I mean, we probably would have done something like that in high school and thought nothing of it. Like, it would have been totally just friends.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was a huge possibility that, like, that would have been normal if it was just, like, us hanging out. But I was like, I feel like this is a date. It's like, if anything is a date, this is. And I also had just watched all of the Office Christmas episodes. So in my brain, I, like, have the whole teapot episode and Jim giving Pam the teapot and he's like, Christmas is the time to tell people how you feel. So I'm like super optimistic and I'm like, if anything is gonna happen, tonight's the night. Because I had gone back to California after Thanksgiving and been like, man, I really would like something to happen between us, but I didn't feel like it was my role to initiate anything. And I was like, I can't initiate anything, but like, why in the world would he ever tell me how he feels? I legitimately told him I wouldn't marry him. Like, if I were in his position, I would never do something like that. Like, that would take guts. And so I prayed like maybe 1 or 2 times. I was like, Lord, like, if you want anything to happen, he's gonna have to lay everything out on the line because I just don't think it's right of me to do anything. So, like, it's in your hands kind of thing. And I was fully resigned to the fact that the possibility of us ever being a thing would slip through my fingers and it would never amount to anything, and I would have probably been sad for the rest of my life being like, man, I wonder what life would have been like if Jackson and I ever dated.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I went into that conversation with, and I'm being completely honest here, I had no hope that anything positive would happen. I pretty much was completely resigned to the fact that I was going to tell her how I felt and she was going to say, too bad, so sad, and that would be it. But I knew if I didn't say it, I would regret it for the rest of my life and wish that I had said something and taken a chance. So yeah, I pick her up, we drive around and look at Christmas lights. And,
for like 2 hours.
Yeah. Okay, here's where I'm at. We're having a great conversation. It's so fun talking to her. We're driving around and I just really don't want to say it because I know in my mind, I know as soon as I say it, like this friendship that we have is going to be completely over and I'm never going to have it back. So I'm trying to stretch this out as long as I can. So we drive around and probably look at every single Christmas light in the town of Hutchinson and have a great conversation.
Yeah.
And so I've exhausted everything. Mm-hmm. No more lights to look at.
Yeah. And I know this too. So I'm sitting there in the passenger seat and I'm like, we've looked at everything. And I'm like, okay, I guess this was just as friends. I was like, I have to be okay with that. It's fine. And so we're like on the road back to my house and I kind of live out in the country. So it's not like you're in town and you don't know where you're going. Like he's going to my house. There's nowhere else that he could be going. And so I was like, okay, I guess it was nothing. Like, we're just gonna be friends and it's gonna be okay. And then we're driving and the turn comes to my house and he just goes straight past it. And I was like, and then he's like, well.
Yeah.
And
so at that point, I was like, all right, it's time. So yeah, I say, well, and pretty much tell you everything that I've just said, lay it all on the line, that I've tried to move on and it didn't work, and there's just nobody like you. I wasted a lot of time comparing a lot of girls to Lindsay Smart, and they all fell short. So yeah, I put that on the table.
I was like, I appreciate you saying that. And then I launch into this pretty like conservative, I guess, explanation of where I'm at and what I'm thinking and feeling, and telling him basically like I was kind of interested again. We just kind of discussed how things might look if that's where the Lord led, and I was like, well, before I would date anybody, like, I really want you to talk to my youth pastor, Steve. And Jackson's first response was like, okay, give me his number. And I was like, oh, all right. And so I was like, he means business. And then I just kind of told him, like, I really wanted to take some time to pray about things and think through things and get advice before we just decided, like, what the future might look like. So I'm like talking to my mom, talking to my sister, calling my friends. And one of the people whose opinion I value the most is Anna's, which is Steve's wife. And she was my mentor and discipler all through high school. And so I was like, I have to talk to Anna. And at the beginning of the week, I was thinking it'd be a long time before Jackson and I would date, if we dated. By the end of the week, I was like, I think we just need to date. Like, I think that's what makes the most sense. And I was very convinced. Like, I'd been praying about it, and that's legitimately how I felt like the Lord wanted things to move forward. But I was like, Anna is so wise. If she were to say no, or to say that she didn't think it was a good idea, I honestly don't know if I could move forward with it. I was convinced she would say like, oh no, I think you need to give it some more time. And so I was like so nervous, and I didn't have a chance to meet with her until Friday afternoon, and Jackson was coming home Friday night, and we had dinner plans. And I knew we were going to talk about like how that week had went and where we were wanting to go from there. And so I show up at Anna's house super nervous, and I led straight off. I was like, I think we should date. She was like, okay. And I explained all the things, and she asked me some questions, and she just kind of sitting there like thinking through all we've talked about, and she's like, yeah, I think so too. And I was like, no. But I was like so happy, really excited. And then Jackson and I went to dinner. I guess we would call that our first official date, because we started dating that night.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was New Year's Eve, and yeah, that was the start of our relationship. Pretty soon after that, Lindsay flew back to California and began the long distance portion of our dating relationship.
Which has been most of our dating relationship thus far. It just became really clear from the beginning that we were both like committed and serious, and like we weren't messing around. We weren't having fun. Like we were really evaluating one another, and we really wanted it to go somewhere. It seemed like, I think when we started dating, it really was just getting to know each other's hearts. And that was it, because we pretty much knew everything else about each other already. So that process went pretty fast and was really revealing for both of us. And in March, Jackson flew out to see me. So that was really fun. And that time is when both of us were like, yeah, I want to marry him. I want to marry her.
Yeah.
So
I can distinctly remember being in California and driving down the coast in Malibu, and like the sun was setting, the water is on my left and Lindsay's on my right, and I remember thinking that I want to do this for the rest of my life. And yeah, I was just very confident that Lindsay was the person I wanted to be with.
Yeah. Yeah, and for me, I'm not a super emotional person. And when Jackson left to go back to Kansas, I was like a wreck. Just a total wreck. I cried saying goodbye, and then I cried the whole like 30-40 minute drive home, which is so dangerous on California freeways. And I went back to my room to wallow for a bit because I was really sad. And I ran across a picture of a list that I had made in high school, basically of what I would want my future spouse to look like. And it was like a full 2-page list in a notebook, and it was very comprehensive. And I'm sitting there reading over this list, and I'm like, Jackson is this list. Like, he meets every single thing I could ever want. And so I was like, yeah, he's the one. Like, that's gonna be my husband.
Yeah, and that was after 3 full days together.
Yeah.
So in hindsight, yeah, if our dating relationship had not been long distance, I don't think it would have taken nearly as long to get to that conclusion. So that wasn't the end of our long distance relationship.
No, that was only the beginning. That was probably the easiest season of long distance.
Yeah. I want to hit some of the highlights.
Yeah.
Somehow, and completely behind my back, without my knowledge, my roommates finagled it so that
they helped me pay for a flight back for the weekend for formal. All the guys were in on it, and so they all were like, let's go take a group picture. I like walk in and just kind of like slide myself in there, like, we're gonna take a picture, and he like looks down and does like a triple take, realizing that it's me.
That was crazy. I was just, minding my own business, taking a picture, smiling for the camera, and then like all of a sudden Lindsay is right there under my arm, and yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah. So that was really fun, and we had a very short but really good weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went back to California. We had at least another month of long distance, I think. And I came home. I got to see him very briefly before he had training for a week because he was going to be going overseas for the summer. So I couldn't talk to him at all during training. And then we had a week after training.
Yeah, about a week.
Where we were able to spend some time together, but I was working full time, so it was just like in the evenings a bit. And then he left to go to North Africa for 2 months. And in those 2 months, I was not able to talk to him at all.
Yeah, 0 communication. So that was really tough in its own way. We decided going into that summer that we would, first of all, we would journal every day, and then we wrote letters to each other throughout the summer. So that was...
Not letters that we were sending, letters that we were just like keeping in a journal, and we got to read when we got back.
Yeah, so that was really sweet at the end of the summer, getting to read all of those journal entries and hear about her summer, which I had been like just dying to hear about. So
yeah. And it was really good, especially for me. I take a long time to make decisions. I want to make sure I'm making the best decision or the right decision. So like, I knew I wanted to marry Jackson already at this point, but I was like wanting to confirm that and like talk with other people, and was praying about that a lot. And I think for you as well, it's a season of just feeling really confirmed in that desire and that decision.
I mean, that summer was great. The Lord taught me a lot, but I think one of the most clear thoughts I had all summer was I really, really enjoyed what we were doing in North Africa and the ministry we were able to have. But yeah, I really wish that Lindsay was there with me. So yeah, that was confirmation in and of itself.
Yeah. So Jackson got home and we had an entire month of being together. Which,
Yeah.
like, sounds like maybe kind of a short time, but for us it was like, this is forever. We got to talk through our summers, and it was pretty clear at that point that we were on the same page. We were able to start talking a little bit more about the future and what that might look like. So after that month of being in the same place, finally, I leave to start a semester of school, this time in Israel. So I leave to be in a time zone 8 hours ahead, and that was tough.
Yeah, so now we've done a 2-hour time difference, a 6-hour time difference with no communication, and an 8-hour time difference.
Yeah. So I was in Israel for 3.5 months. That was the length of the semester, and it's basically the same as Thanksgiving break for every other college. And traditionally, that's when students will go and travel. And my sister lives in the UK, so we decided to meet up in Spain, and Jackson decided to come too.
Yeah, and she didn't know it, but pretty much as soon as she had left for Israel, it was engagement mode. So, yeah, it was a total blessing that she was 8 time zones away because it made it really easy to
keep it a secret.
Yeah, do ring shopping and talk to her parents without her having any idea. So I made that happen, and yeah, got a plane ticket to Spain with a ring in my pocket. So yeah, I did a little coordination with Rachel and Jordan, so we had come up with a game plan for how I was gonna do it. So I did a little snooping on Google Earth, and the town we were in Spain, there's like an old city. So I snooped around a little bit on Google Earth and found a really cute staircase that I thought looked like a good spot to propose. So yeah, we made an ambush plan. And so my perspective of the story, this was like the first morning that we were in Spain. So we flew in the day before and then spent the night. And so yeah, that morning, Lindsay and her sister Rachel took the tram into the city to go visit the market. They didn't know it, but Jordan and I were on the very next tram following them. So yeah, the spot that I had picked out was like a very, very short walk from the market that they were at. So Jordan and I set up our ambush. I was like around the corner behind a wall towards the top of the staircase, and Jordan was further down with the camera. So yeah, Rachel was in on it too, so she kind of led Lindsay over in that direction. And so yeah, they walked up the staircase, so I just waited for them to get there and kind of popped out from the corner and ambushed them.
So for me, we are finished at market, and my sister was like, oh, there's a cool staircase, I think, that will like give us a view if we get to the top of it. Do you want to go see? I was like, oh, sure, why not? So we're walking up the staircase, and Jackson just pops out from behind a corner, and he's like, hey, sweetheart. And I was like, hey. I was like, and my brain is going like, what in the world? It's like, oh, okay, I guess maybe the boys just like decided to meet us and just forgot to text or something. And then I was like, this is a really like random spot to run into us though. Like, why would they know that we were here? And then I saw that Jackson had a box in his hand, and I was like, I see. So.
Yeah, maybe my favorite part of the story. So I had texted Jordan and Rachel beforehand, before flying to Spain, and we had made a plan, and that was several weeks prior, and we had not said anything about it since then. And yeah, we didn't say a word about it in Spain. Like the leading up to the proposal, the extent of our communication and planning it was when Rachel and Lindsay left, I like gave a nod to Rachel that Lindsay didn't see, and that was it. Like, that was pretty cool.
Yeah. And I had the suspicion that he might propose on the trip, because it was like, we're gonna be in Spain, we know we want to get married, like, makes sense to me. but I was not expecting it that morning, that moment.
Yeah.
I, like, looking back on the pictures, there's a picture where my jaw is, like, totally dropped. And I have no, like, recollection of doing that bodily, but I definitely did. Like, it's in the picture.
Yeah.
So I was surprised.
Our goal was to surprise her.
Yeah.
'Cause she's not an easy woman to surprise. So.
It worked. So, yeah.
Yeah.
I guess that's it.
That's the story.